Okay, that was for Chapter 5, the video on purchasing, receiving, and storage. So we will go on with the rest of the chapter slides. Purchasing considerations. Review your supplier's recent inspection reports. Now, of course, this is only going to matter if you are in charge of selecting the suppliers. That isn't something that a manager would do. But the reports should review certain areas: receiving and storage, processing, shipping, cleaning and sanitizing, personal hygiene, staff training, recall program, and any HACCP programs or other food safety systems that they have to have in place, and any violations of those things. But those are the things that go into selecting an approved provider. Receiving guidelines. Have food delivered when staff can inspect it. Make specific staff responsible for receiving. Train them to follow food safety procedures. Allow them to accept, reject, and sign for deliveries. Provide staff with tools. Plan ahead for shipments and inspect deliveries immediately. During the inspection process, you're going to inspect the delivery truck for signs of contamination, overall condition of vehicle, and signs of pest. Then you're going to inspect food items, and then you're going to store your items as quickly as possible. Key drop deliveries. Suppliers given after-hour access to the operation to make deliveries. Staff must inspect the deliveries upon arrival at the operation. Deliveries must meet the following criteria: from an approved source, placed in the correct storage location to maintain the required temperature, protected from contamination in storage, not contaminated, and presented honestly. Reconditioning food. You may be able to recondition and use food that would have been rejected. A shipment of cans is delivered with contaminated surfaces. Those cans may be cleaned and sanitized, allowing them to be used. Recalls. Identify a recalled food item, remove the item from inventory, store the item separately, label the item to prevent it from being placed back into inventory, inform staff not to use the product, and refer to the vendor's notification or recall notice for what to do with the item. Checking the temperature of meat, poultry, and fish. Insert the thermometer stem or probe into the thickest part of the food, usually the center. Checking the temperature of reduced oxygen packaging food. Modified atmosphere packaging, which is vacuum packed and sous vide food. Insert the thermometer stem or probe between two packages. As an alternative, fold packaging around the thermometer stem or probe. Checking the temperature of other packaged food. Open the package and insert the thermometer stem or probe into the food. Temperatures for food deliveries. Live shellfish, oysters, mussels, clams, and scallops receive at an air temperature of 45 degrees Fahrenheit. An internal temperature no greater than 50. Once received, the shellfish must be cooled to 41 degrees or lower in 4 hours. Shucked shellfish you can receive at 45 degrees or lower and cool the shellfish to 41 in 4 hours. Milk can be received at 45 or lower, but you then cool the milk to 41 degrees in 4 hours. Shell eggs can be received at 45 or lower. Reject cans with severe dents in the seam or deep dents in the body. Missing labels, swollen or bulging ends, holes, leaks, or rust. Reject other packaged food with bloated or leaking packaging, broken cartons or seals, dirty and discolored packaging, and cases or packages of signs of tampering. The meaning of package dates. A use by or expiration date is the recommended last date for the product to be at peak quality. Reject items that have passed these dates. Sell by date tells the store how long to display the product for sale. A best by date is the date in which a product should be eaten for best flavor or quality. Required documents. Shellfish must be received with shell stock identification tags. Tags indicate when and where the shellfish were harvested. Store shellfish in their original container. Do not remove the shell stock tag until the last shellfish is used. Write the date and the last shellfish was used on the shell stock tag. Keep a shell stock tag for 90 days after the last shellfish was used. And please remember that, 90 days. Fish that will be eaten raw or partially cooked. Documentation must show the fish was correctly frozen before being received. Keep documents for 90 days from the sale of the fish. Farm-raised fish must have documentation stating the fish was raised to FDA standards. Keep documents for 90 days from the sale of fish. Storage. We've already watched that part. Labeling food for use on site. All items not in their original container must be labeled. Food labels should include the common name of the food or a statement that clearly and accurately identifies it. It's not necessary to label food if it clearly will not be mistaken for another item. Labeling food packaged on site for retail sale. Common name of the food or a statement clearly identifying it. Quantity of the food. If the item contains 2 or more ingredients, list the ingredients and sub-ingredients in descending order by weight. List of artificial colors and flavors in the food, including chemical preservatives. Name and place of business of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor. Source of each major food allergen contained in the food. Date marking. Ready-to-eat TCS food must be marked if held for longer than 24 hours. Date mark must indicate when the food must be sold, eaten, or thrown out. Ready-to-eat TCS food can be stored for only 7 days if it is held at 41 degrees or lower. Day 1 is the day the food was prepared or a commercial container was opened. For example, potato salad prepared and stored on October 1 would have a discard date of October 7. And they do ask you to calculate this, so do remember that it is day 1 that it was opened or prepared. So the first day that you make it counts. You don't count forward 7 days. You count the day that you made it. Operations use different systems for date marking. Some write the day or date the food was prepared on the label. Others write the use by date or date on the label. Whatever you do, make it consistent in your operation. If a commercially processed food has a use-by date that is less than 7 days from the date the container was opened, then the container should be marked with this use-by date as long as the date is based on food safety. Date marking. When combining food with use-by dates in a dish, base the discard date of the dish on the earliest use-by date of ingredients. Consider a shrimp and sausage jambalaya prepared on December 4th. The shrimp has a use-by date of December 8th. The sausage has a use-by date of December 10th. And the use-by date of the jambalaya is December 8th. Make sure storage units have at least one air temperature measuring device. It must be accurate to plus or minus 3 degrees. Put it in the warmest part of the refrigerated units and the coldest part of hot holding units. Use open shelving. Do not line shelves with aluminum foil, sheet pans, or paper. Lining shelving restricts the circulation, so do not line your shelves. Thank you. Rotate food to use the oldest inventory first. FIFO is first in, first out. Identify the food's items used by or expiration date. Store items with the earliest used by or expiration date in front of items with later dates. Throw out food that has passed its manufacturer's use-by or expiration date. Preventing cross-contamination in storage. Store single-use items, such as cups, gloves, in original packaging. Clean dollies, carts, transporters, and trays often. Store dirty linens away from food. Store them in clean, non-absorbent containers, or store them in washable laundry bags. Preventing cross-contamination in coolers and freezers. Store raw meat, poultry, and seafood separately from ready-to-eat food. Ground meat and ground fish can be stored above whole cuts of beef and pork in the same cooler, if the package keeps out pathogens and chemicals and does not leak. Raw meat, poultry, and seafood can be stored with or above ready-to-eat food in a freezer if all items have been commercially processed and packaged. Store food in a clean, dry location away from dust and other contaminants. To prevent contamination, never store food in these areas: locker rooms or dressing rooms, restrooms or garbage rooms, mechanical rooms, under unshielded sewer lines or leaking water lines, or under stairwells. Handling damaged, spoiled, or incorrectly stored food. Discard food that has become unsafe. Expired, damaged, spoiled, or incorrectly stored food, food missing a date mark, ready-to-eat TCS food that has exceeded its date mark, and food that has exceeded time and temperature requirements. If food will be returned to the vendor, store the food away from other food and equipment. Label the food so that it will not be used. That's the end of Chapter 5.